Welcome to the Dough Roller Money Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Berger. Today in episode, I think it's 232. I guess I should make sure I get that right. Yes, episode 232. It's pop quiz time. Now, pop quiz, if you listen to the last episode, it's not really a surprise that we're having a quiz today. And what I thought I would do is I pulled off an article from the World Wide Web, so we know it must be true. And it's about debt consolidation. So what I thought we'd do today, I'm going to read some statements out of this article. I don't want to tell you where the article came from because I don't want to poison the well, so to speak. I don't want you to think either too highly of the source or maybe the opposite of it. So just statement by statement, and you have one of three choices for each answer. True, false, or I guess we'll call it incomplete. There are going to be some statements that, calling them true is giving them far too much credit, or calling them false is just too harsh. So, not too hot, not too cold. It's right in the middle. That's incomplete. And we'll see how you do. And then part of the goal is to figure out, if you can, where this article comes from. Who wrote it, if you have any idea. That's sort of the last question of the quiz. So, debt consolidation. That's the topic. Part of the reason I'm doing this, as you'll see as we go through it though, actually has nothing to do with debt consolidation. It has to do with developing the ability to think for ourselves in financial matters. I think for some it seems to come naturally. For others they struggle. And whenever we're getting advice or information from another person or source, and that's true, by the way, when you listen to this podcast, you read anything I've written or anything anyone else has written, we need to evaluate for ourselves and say, does this make sense? Does this make sense for me? Is it right even? Maybe in some cases it's just wrong. I'm sure, I have no doubt you could go back and look at things I've written or said about finances and they were wrong because I made a mistake, whatever. So part of it is just sort of, exercising that important ability to think for ourselves when it comes to our money. So that's kind of the idea. All right, so let's get started. I've got the article here, both online and right here. You can't see through the paper if you're watching this on video. So, first statement. Debt sucks. True or false? That's literally that is a sentence in the article. Debt sucks, period. True or false? Well, I guess I would give it an incomplete. It's certainly true if you're talking about lifestyle debt. Debt to finance a crazy car you really couldn't afford. I don't think it's true at all when it comes to financing a home. Again, it could be true. You could overextend yourself. But assuming you didn't and it was reasonable terms, I think, in fact, not only does debt not suck in that circumstances, it's wonderful. It's actually a very good thing. Obviously, if we could pay cash, we might. But I can tell you debt helped us buy a home long before we could have otherwise purchased one. And that was a very good thing for our family. Same is true with my education. It helped me get through law school. I would have preferred to have gotten through law school without debt, of course. But I wouldn't say that all debt sucks. But anyway, so that's the first one. We get an incomplete in my view. All right. Next statement. The truth is debt consolidation loans and debt settlement companies suck even more. They don't help you slay mammoth amounts of debt. In fact, you end up paying more and staying in debt longer because of so-called consolidation. True or false? Well, I'm going to have to say this is false, although parts of it are true, at least sometimes. It's certainly true that debt consolidation or debt settlement companies, some of them, can be real scams. And I think treat people quite poorly. In fact, there are, story after story and plenty of complaints with the CFPB or the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, on debt settlement and debt consolidation companies. So I think it's definitely an area that is sort of ripe for scams, or at least selling you a bill of goods and not really delivering. But the part that's false and concerns me about this statement is this. You end up paying more and staying in debt longer because of so-called consolidation. That's just blatantly false. Now, it could be true, right? It's just like saying I could refinance my mortgage and end up paying more money because I refinanced to a higher interest rate. Yeah, I guess that's possible, right? But there's nothing innate to debt consolidation that causes you to pay more or to extend your terms, right? In fact, when we were getting out of debt, we routinely consolidated debts into either a home equity line of credit, in some cases, or into 0% balance transfer credit cards. And it was wonderful. Because of that, we got out of debt much faster than we otherwise would have, and for a lot less money. So certainly debt consolidation done wrong can be painful, but that's probably true of about anything in life. So there's nothing inherent to debt consolidation that results in someone paying more money and staying in debt longer. Just absolutely, completely false. All right. Next statement. And I'm skipping a little bit. Debt consolidation is the combination of several unsecured debts, payday loans, credit cards, medical bills, into one monthly payment with the illusion of a lower interest rate, lower monthly payment, and simplified debt relief plan. True or false? Or incomplete? So for me, this is incomplete. It's incomplete. Well, it's part of it's actually false, but I'm going to give it half credit. The false part is this. The debt consolidation is the combination of several unsecured debts. Now, some might say I'm being a little picky. Debt consolidation has nothing to do with whether the debts you're consolidating are unsecured or secured, right? You can consolidate secured debts. Maybe you have 2 car loan payments. They're both secured by your car. Those are secured debts. You could consolidate those into a home equity line of credit, for example, or some other personal loan. That would be debt consolidation. So it's probably true, although I don't actually have data to support this. My hunch would be that most debt consolidation is consolidating unsecured debts, but that's not the definition of debt consolidation. You can consolidate unsecured debts, secured debts, or you could do a combination. Maybe you pay off a car loan and 2 credit cards with your home equity line of credit. You've just consolidated 3 debts. 1 is secured, the car loan, and 2 are unsecured. All right? The second part of this statement is this: into one monthly bill with the illusion of a lower interest rate, lower monthly payment, and simplified debt relief plan. The problem is the word illusion, and I'm not quite sure why the author put that word in here. You either have a lower interest rate or you don't. It's not an illusion. You do or you don't. You know, when I refinanced into a home equity line of credit, I knew what the interest rates were. Now, in that case, it was variable, and I knew how they set the interest rate in relation to the prime rate. You could consolidate debt into a personal loan that is a fixed rate, and the rate could be higher or lower than some or all of the rates that you have on the debt you're consolidating. So there's no illusion. If illusion is playing a role, then you don't have all the facts. Before you would ever want to consolidate debt, you would want to know what the interest rate is on the new loan, if it's fixed or variable, and if it's variable, how that variable rate is set, how often it can change, by how much can it change, right? So there should be no illusion here at all. And the same is true with a lower monthly payment. Either the minimum monthly payment is lower or it's not. There should be no illusion. You should know this. If you don't know this and you're considering consolidating debts, make sure you figure it out before you sign on the bottom line. So yeah, I give that statement an incomplete. Yeah. All right. On to the next one. When you consolidate, there's no guarantee your interest rate will be lower. Is that true or false? But it's absolutely true. There's no guarantee until you go and apply for a loan and figure out what the rate's going to be, that your interest rate will be lower. I mean, you won't know that until you figure out the terms of the new loan, right? It could be lower. It may not be lower. But if you're just thinking it through now and you're thinking, well, all debt consolidation loans automatically have lower rates than my current debt. And by the way, I've never heard anyone actually articulate that view because it seems so absolutely silly to me. Yeah, there's no guarantee. But of course, once you apply for the loan, you best know the interest rate. All right, so I'll give that one true, but kind of silly. Even if you qualify for a loan with low interest, there's no guarantee the rate will stay low. True or false? So this one is, I'll say false with a caveat. If you're consolidating into a fixed rate loan, yeah, there is a guarantee. It's actually a contractual guarantee that your interest rate will stay what it is. It's a fixed rate. So yeah, there is absolutely a guarantee. It's like when you get a fixed rate mortgage, you're guaranteed to pay whatever. Say it's 4% for 15 years or 30 years. In fact, I'd actually say it's stronger than a guarantee. It's part of the contract. The lender couldn't come back in and say, we have a fixed rate in this loan that we've given you, but we've decided to change the rate anyway. Right? They can't do that legally. Now, if it's a variable rate, then I would say there's a guarantee that it won't stay the same, pretty much. It's usually going to fluctuate based on the prime rate. It could be something else. Usually it can change maybe once a year. It depends on the terms of the loan and by a certain amount each year. And they can sometimes cap the total amount it can go up over the life of the loan. It depends on the terms. So yeah, there's no guarantee the rate will stay low. I have to give that a false. I suppose you could maybe argue it's incomplete. It's certainly false as it relates to a fixed rate. Lower interest rates on debt consolidation loans can change. Well, we've kind of talked about this, but in this article, they go a little further. They say this specifically applies to consolidating debt through credit card balance transfers. The enticingly low interest rate is usually an introductory promotion and applies for a certain period of time only. The rate will eventually go up. Is that true or false? Well, it's absolutely true, right? That's by its very nature. 0% balance transfers, credit cards, have an introductory APR of 0%. They usually, although not always, charge a transfer fee. Standard is 3%, but I've seen as high as 5%. Some cards waive the transfer fee. Chase Slate is one of them, at least as of this recording in November of 2019. I want to say Amex Everyday might be as well. And there's a Bank of America credit card, I believe, that has a no transfer fee option. I think they're all for 15 months. After that, if there's any remaining balance, it goes to the regular purchase APR of the card at that time. So absolutely true. If you do a balance transfer, the rates will eventually go up. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, we used balance transfers extensively to get out of debt. They were absolutely wonderful because you're paying no interest. Even with a 3% transfer fee, if you pay that, you're getting generally 1 to 2 years, depends on the term of the card, but generally 1 to 2 years of 0% interest. We paid our debt down significantly faster and for significantly less money because of debt consolidation using balance transfer credit cards. They were absolutely a very useful tool as we got out of debt. All right. Other loan companies will hook you with a low interest rate, then inflate the interest rate over time, leaving you with more debt. Is that true or false? Well, I guess it's incomplete. It's certainly possible, and I'm sure it happens, right? It doesn't mean it will. It depends on the terms of the loan. And as shady as some debt consolidation companies can be, there are nonprofit organizations that will help you that are not shady. And so to simply say that any company or organization that deals with debt settlement will hook you with a lower interest rate and then inflate the interest rate over time, leaving you with more debt is just not true. And by the way, they can't do anything that's not in the terms of the loan. So if it's a fixed rate loan for, let's say, 5 years, they can't just inflate the interest rate. If it's a variable rate, or if the terms of the loan call for an increased rate after, say, year 1 or year 2, then of course they can and will, but you'll know that before you sign on the dotted line. So don't take that as a defense of debt consolidation companies, because that's not how I mean it. And indeed, I've never used one. I've just done it myself. Why do you even need a debt consolidation company? But there are some that are nonprofit that I think can be very helpful. In any event, yeah, I guess I'd give that an incomplete. This next one's interesting. Consolidating your bills means you'll be in debt longer. Is that true or false? And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, I apologize that I'm drinking my protein shake while I record this podcast. It's just a must. So that's false. It's absolutely false. Consolidating your bills does not mean you'll be in debt longer. Again, depending on the terms of the consolidation loan, you could be in debt longer. Another factor that will determine that is whether you pay just the minimum payment. You could consolidate, let's say, 2 5-year loans into one 8-year loan and then pay extra on it and be out of debt in 3 years, right? One might say, well, if you're going to pay it off early anyway, why would you consolidate from 2 5-year loans to one 8-year loan? Well, one answer might be a lower interest rate, right? So yeah, consolidating your bills does not mean that you'll be in debt longer. Certainly, if you consolidate into a loan with a longer term and you make the minimum payments, then you would be in debt longer. But that's got nothing to do specifically with consolidating your debt. All right. Debt consolidation doesn't mean debt elimination. You are only restructuring your debt, not eliminating it. Is that true or false? Absolutely true. Agree with that 100%. When you consolidate your debt, you have the exact same amount of debt you had before you consolidated, plus, in some cases, you'll have fees on top of that. A good example of that, we mentioned it earlier, a 0% balance transfer credit card, let's say, that charges a 3% balance transfer fee. I think an excellent deal to get, say, 15 months of 0% interest, right? But you're still adding to your debt, at least in the short term, by the amount of the transfer fee. So absolutely correct. Debt consolidation doesn't mean debt elimination. All right. Now, I want to get into a hypothetical. I'll give you some of the details. I don't want to bore you with too many numbers. It's kind of a funny example. In the example, in this article, they start with 2 different loans. You're going to consolidate them, right? So you got 2 loans. One's $10,000, one's $20,000. The $10,000 loan is at 12%. The $20,000 loan is at 10%. Your minimum monthly payment is $1,100. And the way this loan is set up, you would have it paid off in 41 months. So that's roughly 3.5 years. So in this hypothetical, we're going to consolidate those 2 loans into one $30,000 loan at a lower interest rate. Instead of 12 and 10%, we're going to get a new loan at 9%. And our monthly payment's going to go down. Instead of a combined $1,100 for the 2 loans we're consolidating, the new loan will only require us to pay $640. Now, how does it do that? Yes, the interest rate's a little lower, but not a lot. That's saving us a little. So then how does it work that they get the monthly payment so low? Well, the answer is they extend the terms of the loan. Instead of 41 months, this new loan will take 58 months, right? And so with that, here's sort of the conclusion in this article. That's $2,282 more and over another year of being in debt. That's a ripoff. All right, true or false? I give this one an incomplete, and here's why. I have no qualms with the math, although I confess I didn't actually check it. But I'll assume the math is correct. The problem is, the hypothetical is using assumptions designed to make debt consolidation look as bad as possible. Let's come up with some assumptions in this hypothetical that would make debt consolidation look like the absolute last thing you'd ever want to do. We could easily change those assumptions. For example, what we could do is say, on the new loan, instead of a monthly payment of $640, we're going to keep it at the original $1,100. Why not? You were paying the $1,100. We'll consolidate. You've only got 1 loan to deal with. That's nice. You've got a lower interest rate. That's great. and you'll just keep making your payments. And we don't even have to do the math to know, under that really small change to the assumptions, you'll pay your debt off faster and for less money. So I don't have any problems with the math. And I think it's absolutely correct that you should consider the new term of your new loan. If it's extended, that could be why your payments are going down so much. Over time, though, you could end up paying more interest. So that's absolutely something to consider. But that's not a requirement of debt consolidation. You can either consolidate into a new loan that has a shorter term, right? Or in this case, making sure that there are no prepayment penalties on the loans. Just continue to pay what you were paying before. But in this example, you'd have a lower interest rate and you'd have the convenience of a single loan. And all of a sudden, it turns what's here described as a ripoff into actually a really good deal. All right. Now, some things about debt consolidation and debt settlement, right? There's a huge difference between debt consolidation and debt settlement. True or false? Well, that's true. Huge difference. They're totally different. They may sound alike, but like lightning and lightning bugs, they couldn't be more different. So we know what debt consolidation is. We've been talking about it. It's simply taking two or more debts and refinancing them into a single debt. That's it. Debt settlement is actually negotiating with your lender and agreeing to a lower balance, right? You may owe $10,000 on a credit card and you work out a deal with a credit card company where you'll only pay $7,000, right? Now, you should know that if you agree to a debt settlement, obviously you'll be paying less money. That seems like a good deal. I guess it is. But it will hurt your credit score. It will be reflected in your credit report as having not been paid in full. And that will be a huge impact on your credit. In fact, I got an email not too long ago from a listener who asked me that very question. And it's absolutely true. I'm going to see if I can quickly pull up the email. It is absolutely true. Let me see if I can quickly find this. That it will hurt your credit score. And I don't think I'm going to be able to find it quickly. But I just answered the question. So there is a huge difference between debt consolidation and debt settlement. Now, any idea where this article that I've been reading from comes from? It's not, I think if you think about it, it's not that difficult. Well, it's Mr. Dave Ramsey. If you Google debt consolidation, one of his articles is on the first page of Google. That's how I found it. I stumbled upon it. And I was surprised at how much I disagreed with what's in this article. And it's not that debt consolidation companies shouldn't raise a red flag. I think that's certainly true. But it was how much he objected to debt consolidation when it can be an absolutely wonderful way to help tackle your debt. Now, I think in the article at one point, he points out that, the real issue is behavior. That's what you really need to change. Well, I think that's true for a lot of people, not everyone. Some folks are in debt because they had unexpected medical bills, and that's the only debt they have. They're not going out and living a lifestyle that puts them into debt or charges their credit cards to the max. And in fact, after the medical issue was resolved, they haven't gone into any more debt, but now they've got bill after bill after bill. And maybe they've put it on credit cards, maybe they've put it on a home equity line of credit, maybe a whole bunch of things, right? And they have an opportunity to consolidate, which is really, again, just a form of refinancing, right? You think of refinancing when you refinance one loan into another. Debt consolidation is the exact same thing. It's just that you're refinancing two or more loans into one, right? That may be a wonderful opportunity for them to, one, simplify their finances, so they're not writing 12 checks a month, but one, and get a lower interest rate. And perhaps on terms that are not significantly different and by terms I mean the length of the loan, than the debt they already have. It could be a wonderful thing. So I was really surprised to see Dave come out so adamantly against debt consolidation. And I wanted to point this out today, not as a way to pick on Dave. Although, I'm kind of used to picking on him when it comes to investing. When it comes to debt, he's usually kind of considered like he's the guy. And I was just surprised at how, what's the word I'm searching for here? One-sided this article really is. And I think it does, it could do a disservice to people who really could benefit from debt refinancing and debt consolidation. What it really underscores for me, though, is the importance of thinking for ourselves. And that's true, again, even when you listen to this podcast. Don't just take any things that I say. God help you if you do. Don't take the things that I say as gospel. Oh, well, Rob said it. And I know what you're thinking. Rob, no one's ever done that. Trust me. We ain't doing that with you. Yeah, I get it. But just in case there are a few of you out there that are, we need to learn to think for ourselves when it comes to our finances. I think it's great, and I do this all the time. I read what other people say about finances. I read articles. I read books. I learn from them. But I always am filtering. I'm always taking it through a filtering process and asking myself, does this make sense? Do I agree with this? Is it accurate? Does it make sense for me? And I'll tell you, I've really done this more and more with advisors that I hire, whether they're accountants, lawyers, tax folks. And I've seen, having run my own business for a long time, mistakes that they make. And they do make mistakes. And some of them have been very costly for me. In one case, for example, I had my tax preparer, who was a CPA, tell me that the maximum amount of my SEP IRA contributions was limited because I was contributing to a 401k at work. This is when I was still practicing law. And I don't know what the rule is now. So, but then he was absolutely wrong. And he acknowledged he was wrong. But I probably lost 2 or 3 years of additional contributions I could have made to a SEP IRA, which would have sheltered that money from current taxes. And so the point is, we do need to rely on advisors. I think it's good, depending on your circumstance, to have someone prepare your taxes, or certainly we hire a lawyer to do our wills and trusts and stuff, which I'm just not qualified to do. But don't turn off your brain, right? Even when it's something that's complicated, don't turn off your brain. Continue to think through the issues, ask a lot of questions, and do your best to understand the person or organization's own biases. So like in this case, is there any biases in Dave's article? Is there any bias in my podcast? Do I have a certain, and by the way, I don't mean bias necessarily in a negative way, but we all approach issues from a certain perspective, I guess. Some of it can be what would be negative. Maybe all the person wants to do is make money and sell products, and so they are an investment advisor, and they put all their clients in actively managed funds, and so they write an article bashing index funds. Well, you ought to take that into account when you evaluate what they're saying. But the reverse can be true as well. I mean, you get an article from a person that's sort of made their living promoting index funds, and they bash actively managed funds. Well, you should take that into consideration when you're evaluating what they have to say and how it applies to you. So in this case, again, really surprised that the approach that Dave has to debt consolidation. I think he's absolutely right to call out debt consolidation and debt settlement companies as a whole. Again, there are nonprofits that I think can be very helpful, but to simply throw debt consolidation itself under the bus, honestly, I don't understand that at all. I don't understand at all where he's coming from. I can tell you from my experience, we used it to great effect. Saved us. We're not talking small amounts of money. We literally saved thousands of dollars in interest and sped up our time to get out of debt by years because we were regularly consolidating and or refinancing debt to get the lowest interest rates possible. In fact, we went through a series of I'd say about 3 years where we would do a 0% balance transfer, And then when it expired, we just rolled it over to a new one. And so what? We're paying 3% balance transfer fee to get 0% for 15 months. That's a steal. It was a really useful tool for us to get out of debt. So again, the big takeaway is we need to think for ourselves as we're evaluating everything when it comes to our money, getting out of debt, buying a home, investing, even something like index funds versus actively managed funds. I think I can make a strong argument that there's a role for actively managed mutual funds in a portfolio. In my case, I don't have any at the moment, but I think one could certainly make the argument that in certain asset classes, actively managed funds are probably could arguably do better. Certainly that would be true in certain bond asset classes, I think. I think you could make that argument for certain foreign asset classes, emerging market kind of stuff, maybe in the micro or small cap asset class. Probably harder when you get into things like large cap US companies. But the point is, again, not to push actively managed funds, but that, we shouldn't become too much of an ideologue here, right? We want to have the sort of principles and the things that we hold dear on a solid foundation, but always think through the issues and be open to understanding new perspectives and then evaluating whether they make sense for us. So there you go. That's the pop quiz. I kind of like the format. Email me and let me know what you think. dr@dorler.net. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, what is wrong? I mean, it's doorroller.net/Facebook group. I'm going to look up now. I think we're like 7,300 people. Something like that. Maybe more than that. Look, so I log in, it shows me how many people want to join. So there's 78. Oh my goodness. There's 7,800 members and there's 7 new members that want to join. I think what happens is when a podcast gets published that I mentioned the Facebook group, we usually add like 50 to 100 people within a day or two. So I've just added them. So now we're up to 7,809. So would love to have you, doorroller.net/Facebook group. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm always amazed at just how helpful and friendly the comments are. And every now and again, someone gets out of line and you can report a comment or post to me. I get this big red notice from Facebook. A member has reported, a comment or whatever. And I go in and evaluate them. I mean, sometimes I think they're sort of harmless, but sometimes I've really gotten to the point, by the way, where unless you're a long-term member and I know you, which I don't know that this has even ever happened, but like someone will join and immediately want to sell something in the group. And so someone reports it and there's this big red notice I get and there's no back and forth. They're just gone. I boot them. I think that helps keep the discussion on track. I don't, of course, boot people because they have differences of opinion. In fact, that's frankly what makes the Facebook group so much fun, as long as we're respectful. And I've just been amazed at how friendly and respectful and helpful the comments have been, and how someone will ask a question, and by the end of the day, there's 20 or 30 comments. It's really just amazing to see how people have come together to help everyone. So I highly recommend the Facebook group. Again, doorroller.net/Facebook group. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to do a Q&A where I'm going to be answering your questions. I've gotten a ton of them, and I've really fallen behind. So I don't know how many I'll tackle, maybe 5. But I could see doing, responding to your questions like over the next several podcasts until I work through them all. So if you have questions, send an email, dr@doorroller.net. The one thing I ask you to do is somewhere, preferably in the subject, but use the word podcast. And I've mentioned this before, but I have a filter on my Door Roller email so that I only see email that mention the podcast. And I do that because for whatever reason, my Door Roller email gets flooded with spam. I mean, it's just overwhelming. So the only way to sort of keep my sanity is to have that filter. So if you've sent me an email and it didn't mention the word podcast somewhere, in that email. I didn't see it. So you want to resend it and add the word podcast. But would love to hear from you. I do read them all, although, as I said, I've fallen behind. In fact, in looking at my email account, yeah, I've got a lot of emails to go through. So I will do that and start tackling them in the next show. Until then, hope you have a great week. And remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.